Welcome to the Knowing Show. I am your host, Christene Marie. And y'all, I'm excited for today. I'm excited for today because, well, for a couple of reasons. Before I dive into why I'm excited, let me just go ahead and tell you what the Knowing Show is about so that then we can get started and we're all on the same page. The Knowing Show is dedicated to the cultivation of you and me, to the cultivation of the human being in a world of AI where everyone is obsessed with artificial intelligence. We instead take a step back every morning at 9 a.m. Eastern and every evening at between 6 and 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And we cultivate the human intelligence, the artificial, no, not the artificial, the intellectual, emotional, spiritual, and physical. And so that's really what we're doing here every day on the show. And so the morning show is a little bit different from the evening show. This morning every morning we read a lesson from A Course in Miracles. And I'm excited to be here with you all today. Last night, we had our evening show scheduled, and I was feeling so exhausted. And when I'm feeling that way, that's my sign to just take a pause, and frankly, to be quiet and to rejuvenate. And so that's what I did last night. And I hope you all are awake this morning, feeling well. It is 6 a.m. where I am this morning, and I'm ready for a good day. So excited to continue our conversation after we read A Course in Miracles. We're actually going to be hanging out for a little bit longer than normal. We are going to be diving into two intelligences in particular after we read A Course in Miracles. And earlier this week, Thursday night, we talked about how do we identify what our goals are and our ideals for each one of these intelligences, and identifying, did we actually set those in the first place, or were they actually handed to us? Were they modeled for us that we just kind of subconsciously took over? So Thursday night, we talked about the intellectual and physical intelligence goals. And today we're going to talk about emotional and spiritual goals. So with that, I am going to jump into reading our daily Course in Miracles. But before I do, just want to jump here in the chat and greet my friends. Good morning, Wayne, Sergio, good morning, Deuces. I'm glad you all are here. It's 9:07 a.m. here in Millbrook. I love it. Y'all, I'm so excited to be with you. Let's go ahead and jump in. Let's go ahead and dive into, we're just going to do a couple lessons for review, and then we will dive into today's review. All right, lesson 91, miracles are seen in light. Lesson 92, miracles are seen in light, and light and strength are one. Lesson 93, light and joy and peace abide in me. Lesson 94, I am as God created me. Lesson 95, I am one self united with my Creator. Lesson 97, salvation comes from my one self. Lesson 97, I am spirit. Lesson 98, I will accept my part in God's plan for salvation. And today's reviews. Lesson 99, salvation is my only function here. My only function here is to forgive the world for all the errors I have made, for thus I am released from them with all the world. Lesson 100, my part is essential to God's plan for salvation. I am essential to God's plan for the salvation of the world, for he gave me his plan that I might save the world. Y'all, I'm going to do something that I haven't done in a little bit. I'm actually going to go into lesson 99, and we're just going to read that together. Let's just do a full deep dive review. Salvation is my only function here. Salvation and forgiveness are the same. They both imply that something has gone wrong, something to be saved from, forgiven for, something amiss that needs corrective change, something apart or different from the will of God. Thus do both terms imply a thing impossible, but yet which has occurred, resulting in a state of conflict, seen between what is and what could never be. Truth and illusions both are equal now, for both have happened. The impossible becomes the thing you need forgiveness for, salvation from. Salvation now becomes the borderland between the truth and illusion. It reflects the truth because it is the means by which you can escape illusions, yet it is not the truth because it undoes what was never done. How can there be a meeting place at all where heaven and earth can be reconciled within a mind where both of them exist? The mind that sees illusions makes them real. They have existence in that they are thoughts, and yet they are not real, because the mind that thinks these thoughts is separate from God. What joins the separated mind and thoughts with mind and thought, which are forever one? What plan could hold the truth inviolate, who yet recognize the need illusions bring and offer means by which they are undone without attack and with no touch of pain? What but the thought of God could be this plan, by which the never done is overlooked and sins forgotten which were never real? The Holy Spirit holds this plan of God exactly as it was received of him within the mind of God and you're in your own. It is apart from time in that its source is timeless, yet it operates in time because of your belief that time is real. Unshaken does the Holy Spirit look on what you see, on sin and pain and death, on grief and separation and loss. Yet does he know one thing must be true. God is still true, is still love, and this is not his will. This is the thought that brings illusions to the truth and sees them as appearances beyond which is the changeless and the sure. This is the thought that saves and that forgives because it lays no faith in what is not created by the only source it knows. This is the thought whose function is to save by giving you its function as your own. Salvation is your function with the one to whom the plan was given. Now you are entrusted with this plan along with him. He has one answer to appearances, regardless of their form, their size, their depth, or any attribute they have. Salvation is my only function here. God is still love, and this is not his will. I really love this. Y'all, I was in the comments yesterday on one of the past lives. I was chatting with Thousand Dare, and we were going back and forth around the power of thoughts. And it's so interesting because so much of, sorry, my eyes itchy. So much of what we experience in the world, actually we're seeing and experiencing because of and starting in our thoughts. But what's so interesting is here, this is the thought that saves and forgives, the thought of truth, because it lays no faith in what is not created by the only source it knows. So it lays no faith in what is not created by the source it knows. So effectively, if we're putting faith, if we're putting power, if we're putting attention and energy on that which is not created by God, thoughts that are not from God and thoughts that God would not have effectively, if we're putting there's this quote that I love, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So what thoughts are we putting our attention on? And then that is effectively what we're breathing life into, what we're orienting our mind and being around. And then that's usually what we're going to experience. But if we have this filter, in our minds, if we have this filter, that's why I like the concept of going to the optometrist and putting your eyes against the dials and then switching the dials, and then you get to see. If our goal is that our dials are oriented to be that of God's, then what we're going to see is going to be from the source, from God. He would be the source through which we then see the world. We used this example probably a couple months ago, which I still really love. We talk about the fact that so many of us are like looking around for where to plug in our what is this called? We're looking for a place to hook up and charge. We're looking for an electrical socket to plug into. And so what's so important is that where we actually find our source, where are we sourcing value? Where are we sourcing our worth? Where are we sourcing joy? Where are we sourcing meaning? And so often we actually have multiple sources that we'll plug into. And then, after, and it's funny, this analogy can, obviously it will break down at some point, but for now it's working. Maybe in the morning, we actually do hook up to truth in the show. It's like, okay, God, what do you think? Who do you say that I am? And we're plugging into the source of God. And then we unplug and then we plug into the source of business where, okay, boss, what am I supposed to do today? Tell me what I'm supposed to do. And then I'll remove my plug there and then go plug into my own self. Like, okay, I've got to perform. I've got to do really, really, really well. And then I unplug and then I go plug into the source of family. I'm looking for meaning there. But the thing that's so interesting is that so often in the plugging into these different sources, either the source itself can run dry or the source itself can prove to not have what we actually need in that moment. Or the source can actually be just unhealthy in general. A lot of times we'll plug into the source of culture. We'll pick up our phone and start scrolling. And that's not necessarily a terrible thing. And at the same time, that's what are we feeding ourselves? That is a source that is giving us and adjusting the dials through which we view the world. When I was younger, my mom was really careful about what I listened to in terms of music and also what we watched, because she just knew that what we listen to, it's like it forms the way that we think and it forms the way that we look at the world. And so she was really careful about what we watched, what we read. My sister and I weren't allowed to read romance novels because she's like, that's not how the world works. And I don't want you to subconsciously form this expectation that that's what happens. And I'm so grateful. So the more we monitor our sources of where we're hooking up to, the more we monitor what are our inputs that are coming in, and then we're taking into us, and then they process inside of us, and then they inform the way that we experience the world. What are the sources that we are allowing ourselves to be hooked up to, that we are allowing to feed our mind, body, soul, spirit? That is so, so, so critically important. Is it the source of God? Is it the source of society, of culture? Is it the source of even, it's funny, a lot of times we subconsciously, we don't even know this, but we are sourced by what our parents used to tell us when we were kids. We haven't undone the original scripts that were handed to us. And so a lot of times we subconsciously are bringing the past. We don't actually realize that we are operating off of old data. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump here in the chat. Good morning. Engineer, good morning. Thank you for joining. Rajesh, good morning. Kevin, good morning. Jeffrey, Frey, good morning. Joseph, Sandrine, good morning. Umberto, good morning. Martin, Gage, good morning. Douglas from London, Canada. I love that. Billy Wheeler, good morning. Kazook, hope I said that right. Kazooks. HC Time, good morning. Jonah, the Shite Show says, it's all about how you think. So true. Jay Stovall, good morning. Giorgio, good morning. Rabani, DT, good morning. Revo, Melvin, Innocent. Oh, Innocent Soul, good morning. Goes Hunters, good morning. SBT, Jeff, Gary, good morning, everybody. SB Top, Jeff, good morning. Pedro, good morning. Kaya, good morning. Mark, good morning. Roger, X2, Ansley, Africa, good morning, Ansley. I'm glad you're here. Byron, good morning. Off-grid lifestyle. Good morning. X2. She's hallucinating chat messages. Chicken on biscuits. Good morning. I'm glad to see you. Dave Russell. Hello. Out of the trenches. Good morning. Dead Nights. Good morning. Collinsville. Good morning. Kurt Shines. Good morning, Mamo. Wayne. Mind, body, soul, spirit. Wow, Wayne. Thank you. That is so meaningful. Oh my goodness. Yada, what is the topic for today? Good morning. We are talking, so every morning we read A Course in Miracles. We read through a daily lesson, and we were actually reading today, one of the lessons was salvation is my only function here. And what we were talking about specifically just right before you were joining is asking the question of where are we sourcing our information? Where are we sourcing our value? Where are we sourcing our meaning? Where are we hooked up? Where are we plugged into? I love the analogy of like the electrical socket that like so many of us are kind of walking around looking for a place to plug into, because and the reason why that's so apt is because every time we pick up our phone, we are hooked up to a source. And usually it's not great. X2, I'm going to go ahead and put you on timeout just because you're bringing in some of the environments that, or some conversations and discussions that we're just not looking for. But that's really, y'all, that's really important. Who are you sourcing life from? And it can be in small ways or in big ways. But the truth is that we need to analyze the sources because they inevitably shape who we become. You know, I think of it as an information processing system like in a computer where you've got your inputs and then they go into the information processing center, you filter them, process them, and then they form and integrate into your outputs. So the things that we input are where we're sourced gives us inputs and then ultimately has an impact and shapes who we become. And so if we are sourcing from places that are not life-giving, that are not even in alignment with our values, you know, I've got a friend who every time his algorithm is so changed to only show him things that really makes him angry. And so he gets on and feeds his mind with all this bad news, with all this stuff that just makes his blood boil. But that's how the algorithm works. It captures his attention, it gives him an emotional reaction, and the algorithm's like, give him more of that because he's reacting. And so this is such an important question of what is currently feeding you at that molecular level. You know, who are the people that you're taking counsel from and taking counsel with? You know, who are you actually bearing your soul to, and what kind of information are they giving you in return? Are you constantly building your life in accordance with what you know to be true, with what you know is even your own potential? Y'all, it's actually a lot easier for us to go and exist in rooms and in conversations where they're not holding us to the highest standard. It's easier that way because then we can play small. But man, if we're in a room where it's like, oh man, I actually need to speak the truth. I actually need to be kind. I actually need to take responsibility. If we're in those rooms where we're being challenged to act that way, we're being forced to raise to a standard. And so the question for you and I this morning is, are we intentionally putting ourselves in those spaces where it's like, oh, no, actually, we're collectively as a group, we're going to hold you accountable to become what you can be. You know, there are some folks who are really internally motivated. God bless them. I really love being in a community and in a relationship where I see somebody who is better than me. And I'm like, man, I want to be better because I see you. And y'all, that's part of what we are trying to do here every morning is how do I be better because of this conversation, because of our time together? I now am going to go out and after this, I'm going to go to the gym. You know what I mean? Like, okay. And then I'm going to do my vertical alignment and really take time this morning to invest in where I'm being sourced specifically. I'm going to go spend time with God and I'm going to go spend time on, okay, planning for next week. What are the things that I need to do to get my business and myself and my life to the next level? And then how do I love well? there's kind of, and this actually goes to what we're going to be talking about today. In each one of these categories, intellectual intelligence, emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, physical intelligence, we have an ideal, whether we realize it or not. And so often that ideal has been shaped by subconsciously what we saw in childhood, or what was modeled for us, or what society tells us. So a lot of times for men and women in the physical realm, the ideal is 100% shaped by culture. It's on the front of those magazines. And then we think, oh, that's how I need to look. And then there's shame for however far we are from that ideal. And then the question is, well, wait a second. If I defined my own ideal, what would I even want? How do I want to feel? How do I want to look? Because the reality is that one isolated ideal in the physical cannot ever exist in isolation. It also needs to be taken in account with the emotional intelligence. What's my ideal there? My sister and I were talking about this last week. She literally texted me and she was like, you know what? I actually would prefer not to go out with a guy who's super jacked. And I said, why? She was like, that shows me that his values is more in how he looks than how he would be with his family. And obviously that's a very broad sweeping statement. I'm sure there's many men who invest in their family and look great, but there's a give and take. If you're going to spend that much time in the gym, where else are you sacrificing? So actually, I've thought about this a lot for myself. I'm going to give myself a certain amount of time every day to work out, but I'm not going to be crazy on diets and crazy getting a trainer. I'm not going to be crazy in the gym because I really value relationships. I value growing, knowing actually is something I care so deeply about. I care about my other business. And so what's the sacrifice? If I create this ideal, what then? This is where we have to work backwards. It's like reverse engineering. If that's my ideal, what are the steps I need to take to get there? And then also, what are the key performance indicators? There's a concept, you shall know a tree by its fruit. So what is the fruit of that ideal? Where am I actually going to have to maybe make sacrifices in other areas of my life? And where do I need to really take responsibility for where I'm not at yet? So this conversation of what's the ideal, what are the indicators that mark I'm on the right path or I'm not, and then reverse engineering, what are the steps that I need to do, the habits that I need to implement to get there. All right, let's go ahead and jump back here in the chat. So Yada, I think that was all in response to your question of what are we talking about. Dean Tar, good morning. Good to see you. Dr. Loque, good morning. I grew up in Maryland, actually. Off-grid lines. Oh, nice. You're in the Philippines. I love that. I've always wanted to go to the Philippines. A friend of mine just moved there and just said it's absolutely beautiful. Victor, good morning. Bill High Roller, good morning. RC Creation, good morning. User, yeah, I agree. I get a bunch of conspiracy theories. It's really true. The internet really, man, social media can really, you can be feeling great. You pull up Facebook and all of a sudden it's just like you get so mad or so upset, or confused or whatever. It's just wild. Magic Clips, good morning. Stay Hard, good morning. Ronnie, thank you. Wow, I appreciate that. That's so kind. All right, Silent Frames, good morning. LM Bessel, good morning. Nameless, thank you. Mark DeGloria, good morning. Mark, no, if you were asking genuinely. What would you do if someone came up in the house? Oh, okay, Dookie, we don't talk like that. Wayne says, I need your help to start a business. I would love to help you with that. What kind of business are you looking to start? And frankly, maybe we'll even make Monday morning, or Monday evening, I don't know if we have a guest then, but I can always schedule out the show to be around business. But I would love that. Justin, good morning. LD, Wank, good morning. 210 Stacks, good morning. AJ, Mr. Player, Mr. Shadow, good morning, y'all. Thank you for joining. Ibra, good morning. Christopher, thank you. Thanks for joining. Gino. You have such a bright smile. What's your secret? Oh man, it goes back to exactly what we're talking about right now. Where do you source your life? Where are you sourcing joy? Where are you sourcing hope? Where are you sourcing peace? Where are you sourcing meaning and value and worth? You know, y'all, it was wild. I'll take it very real and vulnerable for a minute. For those of you who are new to this show, I've shared this a handful of times. I got married when I was 20, and I really, really loved my husband. And it was, 2 weeks into our marriage, I could tell, I was like, something changed. Like, I don't know what did, but something changed. And year 5, he told me, I've been mad at God that we got married. And then year 6, he said, I'm not sure if I want to stay. And then year 8, he left. And so it just really broke my heart in so many ways. And what I learned, because I knew at that time I felt like I was at a crossroads where I was like, okay, either I can play the victim for the rest of my life, because technically he's the one leaving, or I can take radical responsibility for why I am in this situation. And so I looked in the mirror for the first time, like a figurative mirror, and looked and saw myself and saw that I'd been living as a non-person. And I saw that I had just been orienting my whole life, that I'd been looking to the right and to the left, like looking to everyone around me to define my meaning, to give me purpose. And I was just like, what do you need? What do you need to be happy? How can I do that? How can I come in and make you experience happiness? It was so funny. One time, my dad got hurt, and I heard my mom, she like stubbed his toe, and he says, my mom says, oh, I'm sorry. Or she says, oh, I hate that happened. And subconsciously, I thought, oh, I'm so impressed by her that she didn't take responsibility for him getting hurt. And then I heard myself, and I was like, what the heck? And I realized that ever since I was a kid, I have felt the weight of responsibility of not just keeping other people happy, but keeping them safe. Like since I was 4 years old, I have 5 siblings and my 2 parents, and I've felt like I'm responsible for everyone else's emotional thermometer, which is a terrifying thought that a 4-year-old would feel that kind of responsibility. And so this was though how I lived and how I oriented my life. And so to your point where it's like, how do you get a glow? Y'all, it's fun. When we actually learn, our worth and our value is not predicated on anybody else, that is the most freeing thing. Because then I can go and be go sit with my parents and love on them and receive love from them. But I know I don't need to go fix them, heal them, make them happy. That is, man, I lived that way for so long. I remember after my husband left, I was on a plane. I was going out to California to look at some business ventures. And I was like, what is this feeling? Like, I've never felt this feeling before. I don't know like what this is. And I realized, oh, I'm happy. Like, I don't have anyone looking to me, leaning on me for their emotional well-being. And I felt free for the first time in my life. And so over the last 4 years, my husband left, I guess, 5 summers ago in 2021, which is crazy. And I've learned so much. I've experienced so much freedom in coming to know who I am and who I was created to be, and coming to experience the freedom that comes from knowing. And so I wanted to double click on that a little bit, because there's so much freedom that comes from knowing who I am, whose I am, and why I am. Why am I here? What does God say about me? And who was I created to be in the first place? So effectively, it's taking that former orientation to the right and to the left, having my compass navigating east and west, and navigating north now, being vertically aligned with who God says I am and the truth of that. And it has been so, now it's like I can still love these people that I really, really do love, and I experience real freedom in so doing. So just jumping back here in the chat. Guarver, good morning. Mr. Shadow, Jacob. He says, what color are your eyes? I think that they're hazel. Peter Brookie, good morning. Ariana, good morning. Let me see. I accidentally lost my place. Hold on. All right. I'm going to save the chat as I do so that I can come back and read it later. Okay. All right. All right. I am saving the chat, and then I'm going to jump back in the chat to continue chatting. All right. Hold on. All righty. Okay. All right. Jumping back. All right. AJ says Maryland is not far from me. Oh, nice. Where do you live? David, hi, happy 250th. Yeah, dude, isn't that so true? 250 years. Let's go. My Pat, I actually am going to be working today. Sender V, good morning. I'm so glad to see you. Hello. Con, good morning. Thank you. Allen's. To have you join then. Bradley, good morning. Ronnie rocks. Christine, how do I work with you? Ronnie, if you want to send me an email, I would love to hear from you. And I would love to hear kind of what you have in mind, if it's in regards to your business or if it's in regards to kind of the personal side. I'll work with people doing knowing intensives, which is one-on-ones where we kind of dive deep and get to know you and who you are and what your values are, your mission, and how to get to the growth on the other side of that, or also your business. And we'll dive into the business. And the goal is that for either, whether we're working together on the business front or on the personal front, or with your family or with your team, it's what's the current status? What's the baseline of where we are today? Where have we come from? And then where are we going to? And what are the steps that we need to take to get there? And it's really kind of building out that pathway, I guess, so to say. Bang Top, good morning. I'm glad to see you. Alan Cowboy, I have no idea. I'm sorry. I wish I could help you. But that's a beautiful question. David Brown, I like garage sales. I do too. Oh, maybe I'll go to a farmer's market today. That would actually be fun. Wayne, I love it. Radical responsibility. Own it up to your shit. Yes. Isn't that so true? Oh my gosh. AJ, thank you. Jesse James, good morning. Duck Row, good morning. Wayne says childhood trauma affects everybody differently. Our neurological systems get wired in different ways from abuse. 100%. I love this. Pietra Nergeru. The family that prays together stays together. I love that. That's so, so, so true. Dr. Loque, thank you. You know, it's interesting. I did a lot of classical education, Latin, Greek, but so much of what we talk about on the Knowing Show has solely come from experience, and I actually think experience is the best teacher. There's something around sitting in a classroom and learning about something versus living something. And so I would say that experience has been my education. So that's what I would say. Wayne, good morning. Fred, I don't know what you guys mean when you say that. Wayne, you sent a couple messages on Instagram. Oh, all right. Well, I'm going to go look. Thank you for telling me. I will say, for those of you who are just joining, we're talking about where are we sourcing joy? Where do we source meaning? Where do we source hope? Where do we source our value? And we're talking about different places that a lot of people can source things in a very subconscious way. And a lot of times it actually is. A lot of times there actually is damaging sources there that we are not even aware of. And one of those honestly is social media. And so on the social media front, I really limit the time that I'm on there. I set my alarm to, I think, be 25 minutes. And then at 5 minutes, it lets me know, hey, you've been on here a long time. And then I'll jump, it's my 5-minute warning for the day. So I've got 25 minutes set for Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram apps. I don't even have TikTok on my phone because I get nervous that I'll get addicted to it. And so, yeah, I would really encourage all of us to consider, as we're thinking about who we want to be. And actually, let's dive into this. Yada, I just saw you say, there's a lot of stuff here in the chat that it's not worth reading. I agree. We're going to be, for those of you who are new and those of you who have been around, first, I'm so grateful you all are here. And we are, in the next probably 2 weeks, I have an EA starting in the next week or two, and she's going to, he or she, I don't know. I've got to figure out who they're going to send me. But they are going to help me start the community. And from there, the community is going to be the place where I read the topics or the comments, because you're right, Yada. There's so much to kind of weed through here where it just takes a lot of time, but I really want to engage with you guys. But if we're like, okay, over on WhatsApp or over on Circle, that's where we have our conversations about the conversation that we're having here, the chats and comments around the conversation. So that's my hope, is that we can actually have it be where I'm not reading through a lot of the comments of trolls, and we're able to just get really genuine and maybe even have a moderator, so that while I'm in the community, we've got a moderator here on YouTube that can be encouraging people to head over there if they really are serious about participating. So, but today, let's go ahead and dive into what we wanted to talk about very specifically, which is, okay, we've got Thursday. We talked about this before. We talked about physical intelligence and intellectual intelligence. What were our ideals in both of those regards? And then working backwards, again, kind of reverse engineering. If that's my goal, if that's my target, what are the steps that I need to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis to get there? And then what are the key performance indicators? What are the KPIs that indicate success over whether I'm on the right path, but then also what indicates whether I'm not? We need to know, yes, the signs of health, but also the signs of unhealth, so that we can act accordingly and take action accordingly. So we talked about those two Thursday night. Today, we're talking about what is our ideal emotionally, what is our ideal spiritually. And just for those of you, I want you kind of to be thinking about this from the lens of, if you would like, I'm doing a 61-day challenge starting, it's going to start May 1st next week, but we're going to be meeting tomorrow actually at 6 p.m. Eastern. And we're all just honestly going to be joining tomorrow to really nail down what is the one thing that I want to focus on for 61 days to cultivate, to strengthen, to grow in me. Okay, I just got a notification that my mic wasn't working. Can you guys hear me? I think so. Okay, good. So we're going to be examining those topics, but think of it from under the lens of, okay, if I was going to pick one thing for 61 days, what would my one thing be? And it can be professional, it can be something, a financial goal. It could be a fitness goal. It could be a spiritual goal to get you closer to your ideal. But before we can really make an intelligent choice about what that one thing is, we actually really need to get clear on what even is my ideal in that category. And then we can talk about reverse engineering. What are the habits necessary to get there, etc. So let's go ahead and start with this question of, when it comes to emotional, like the emotional sphere, I think of the emotional having to do, and actually let me give you the definition of emotional intelligence. And thank you. Great tone. I'm glad to see you. Your mic is working, Wayne. I can hear you. Good. I'm so glad. Sammy. Hello, my friend. Please know your voice helps and helps me to tell my story. Oh, so Sammy, I am so glad you're here. And for everyone who doesn't know, I just want to quickly introduce a friend of the Knowing Show. Sammy P joined a couple months ago, and it happened to be the date of when he had his accident. And he's been diagnosed with being a quadriplegic C2, needing a ventilator. And so, Sammy, we just are with you and we love you. We're so glad you're here. We're praying for you, and come hang out with us. I'm so glad you're here. We're talking about our 61-day challenge starting Friday, May 1st, all the way through May, all the way through June, ending July 1st. But we're meeting tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. If any of you would like to join that, I'm going to go ahead and drop just the form here. And then I'm going to, for those of you who joined, you should have gotten an email from me, but I'm going to go ahead and just check and make sure. I'm doing some housekeeping today. I love it. Great Tone says Sammy is very important here. I love that. I'm so glad. Wayne says, we love you, Sammy. Say blessed brother. I love that. I love you guys. Thank you. Sammy, we love you. So let's go ahead and start with, we're going to identify what is our ideal emotionally, and then what is our ideal spiritually. What do we need to do to kind of reverse engineer, work backward from our ideal to then identify, okay, this is what I need to grow. Jay Valdez says, what's the challenge? We're all picking one thing that we're committing to for 61 days. And so in that, we're going to focus on whatever that one thing is. But yeah, Wayne says, yes, I'm not meeting with anybody, but I will do push-ups every day. Not too many though. Good, Wayne. I love it. Good for you. What I wouldn't be surprised is that I wouldn't be surprised if, as you experience every day doing push-ups, that you'll be able to do more as the days go by. So emotional intelligence, in order for us to identify our ideal emotionally, it is so important that we actually know what the definition of this is. So emotional intelligence is the ability to become aware, to understand, to control and convey one's own emotions, and the ability to experience interpersonal relationships with empathy and with wisdom. So those two aspects are, it really is the individual personal experience with your emotions. Are you aware of them? Do you understand them? Can you control them? Can you convey them? And then also handling interpersonal relationships with wisdom and with empathy. So when we're thinking about what is our ideal on an emotional scale, it's really interesting. Have I actually first come to that individual responsibility to know who I am, to assume the radical control over my emotions? And do I know why they're there, where they came from? And then the second thing is, okay, am I actually able to handle interpersonal relationships with wisdom and with empathy? And what even is my ideal in that regard relationally? So you can look at emotional intelligence in terms of what's your ideal here. I actually needed to start with, okay, I couldn't even look at my relationships until I had mastered this aspect of awareness, understanding, control, and conveyance of emotions. I had no idea who I was, what I thought, why I thought that way. And y'all, it really was important that I took the time to be able to do that, to know that aspect. And then I could look at, okay, how is everyone else doing? How do I engage with everybody horizontally? but it was my responsibility to go inward first. And for, at the time, 28 years old, I had never done any of that. And so that is our chief number one radical responsibility, is to go inward first, understand what is going on. Why do I react this way? Why am I feeling this way? Y'all, I'm sure you guys have heard the term walking on eggshells. It's really, really easy for us to feel that way around other people. But how often do other people feel that way around us? Where our mood swings and we change our preferences, and we're not reliable on an emotional level, and people don't know who they're going to experience. And so how do we bring safety into not just our external relationships, but also, here's the thing, bring safety so that I can process whatever pain is there that needs to come to the surface, that needs to be moved through, worked through. And I'm not going to judge harshly the pain that comes out, but that I'm really able to create a safe space in and of my own self, of like, oh man, I didn't even know that my reaction here today in the present was predicated in an experience in the past that really caused me pain when I was 7 years old. There's a through line for most every emotion we experience today. There is an unprocessed experience that took place associated with it. And the thing that's so interesting, Wayne says childhood trauma. The thing that's interesting around trauma is that I'm not just talking about I think of it as capital T trauma moments, when a big traumatic instance happened. If you were abused, if you had your parent leave, if you witnessed, a shooting, that those are capital T moments. I'm talking also about the little T moments, like the death by 1,000 paper cuts of, just being bullied in a really, like, maybe even small way, but man, did it have deep impact on you. It had deep impact on the way you saw yourself and the way that you experienced other people, in terms of even how you experienced God. And that is still true to this day. A lot of our worldviews were shaped in the ages of 7 to 12, and maybe even earlier than that, depending on kind of like what your environment was. Actually, the Jesuit priests say, give me a child until they're 7. So how much more so are our actual worldviews shaped before 7? So we've got this tremendous responsibility as adults today to go back to those moments in time in childhood and say, okay, where does that still hold power over me? Because Wayne, you're talking about triggers. The gun has to be loaded in order for somebody to push the trigger. If I wasn't already so upset about, if I already wasn't feeling something super negative, then I wouldn't actually be triggered by somebody else. That was already in me. That is radical responsibility. And Mike John, I'm just seeing your comment. It's really important that we actually do take the time to look inward, that we do take responsibility for I, me, myself. We need to be talking about this, because otherwise we point our finger and blame everybody else for why our life is the way it is. When we do look inward, not only are we addressing and taking radical responsibility for how I am in this moment, how is the past tied in, but we're also taking away the power that we handed to everybody else to have the ability to pull the trigger in my life. No, instead, I am taking the time to understand, again, the definition of emotional intelligence, to be aware, to understand, to control, and to convey my emotions. And that conveyance of emotions, ending with that one, is actually the conduit to then engage in the interpersonal relationships with empathy and with wisdom. The conveyance, the sharing of the emotions. Y'all, I want to read a quote. I was reading this book last night. I took myself out on a date. This is Immortal Diamond by Richard Rohr. I don't know how long this is going to take, so bear with me. I just kept sighing and oohing and ahhing while I was reading this. It was so beautiful. It was talking about the vulnerability of God. What? I freaking love that. But really, if we think about it, how much more so is there's no greater example. Like, if we're wanting to learn how to be vulnerable, how to experience vulnerability with ourselves and with other people. it actually, we have to also consider, well, am I even vulnerable with God? Because there is an element there. And I saw somebody say, thank God this is a non-Jesus channel. Y'all, the goal is not that we're talking about religion, but the goal is that we're actually talking about the reality of what is your relationship to God. Because the way that you think God sees you and the way that you see God has a lot to do with how you see yourself and the way you see the world. It's all very connected. The way you think you see other people, the way that you see yourself is how you project on other people. So it's all like these ongoing loops, these water wheels, so to say, where there's no one thing in isolation. Your spiritual intelligence is deeply impacting your emotional intelligence, which is deeply impacted by your intellectual, which is deeply impacted by your physical. We are an integrated being, but we have overemphasized the value in the intellect. We've only been cultivating the intellectual intelligence since we were children. So what would it look like to bring balance to the other intelligences so that we can, given any moment, we know how to drop into the emotional intelligence, pull forth from there to love and give when someone is experiencing the grief of death. To drop into spiritual intelligence and say, you know what I was taught about God actually isn't true, but I'm no longer bitter and angry about it. I'm now free. How cool is that? To not be tethered to the past because of bitterness or anger, but we're actually free from the lies that were told to us. Physical intelligence. I now no longer feel shame. How amazing is that? You know? And so that's so much. And freedom is on the other side of knowing. So, good morning, Thousand Air. I was talking about you earlier. I'm so glad you're here. Also, I went and looked at your channel yesterday, and you're so cool. So we'll talk about that later, but just wanted to say hello. Okay, so this is, I'm reading, I have to find where I want to read this because I was reading this last night while I was at dinner, and man, it was so beautiful. And I just want to know, like, where do I even start because it was so powerful. All right, I'm just going to read all of this. It's just, bear with me. It should probably take 3 minutes. The big and hidden secret is this: an infinite God seeks and desires intimacy with the hidden soul, with the human soul. Once you, I'm just going to start all over. The big and hidden secret is this: an infinite God seeks and desires intimacy with the human soul. Once you experience such intimacy, only the intimate language of lovers describes what is going on for you. Mystery, tenderness, singularity, specialness, changing the rules for me, nakedness, risk, ecstasy, incessant longing, and of course, suffering. This is the mystical vocabulary of the saints. One's biggest secrets and deepest desires are usually revealed to others and even discovered by ourselves in the presence of sorrow, failure, or need. When we are very vulnerable and when one feels entirely safe in the arms of someone's love. That is why all little ones have such a huge head start. When vulnerability exchange happens, there is always a broadening of being on both sides. We are bigger and better people afterwards. Those who never go there always remain small and superficial and unconnected to themselves. You would normally experience it as a lack of substance or even reality in a person. People who have avoided all intimacy normally do not know who they are at any depth and cannot tell others who they are. This is the real evil of mere promiscuous sex. Only when we are in such a tender place can God safely reveal the inside of God to us. All self-sufficient ones remain outsiders to the mystery of divine love because they will always misuse it. They have actually blocked its possibility and stopped its give and take by their hardness. I believe this is the way love has to work. You can give more only when you see how the other used and enjoyed a first dose of love. Has it opened up the channel or closed it? Divine love continues to be poured out forever as long as we are not misusing it or keeping it to ourselves. If you try to misuse infinite love, it hides and you cannot go deeper. Fullness in a person cannot permit love because there are no openings to handles, no give and take, and no deep hunger. Effectively, there is a humility in receiving love. in order to even receive love, there's an openness to say, I realize that to be humble and receive love. I want to, okay, so this is my first time talking about this because I just read it last night. So let's see how this goes. There's a connection between humility and vulnerability. And it was so funny. We were talking about this last week, and I was reading notes from September, and I had that through line of humility and vulnerability. And y'all, it really is so true. Are we humble enough to be vulnerable to receive love? Are we humble enough to be vulnerable enough to experience healing and love from other people, and to give in as a result of that? The aspect of receiving, the Greek word for receive is lambano, and it's very active oriented. And it's the water wheel that what comes in, what I receive actually then comes out of me. That's the thing with inputs and outputs. That's the give and the receive. That is what it means. A beautiful way that it actually, whatever comes in comes out. And y'all, it's really, really, really meaningful when we actually get to experience real love, because it's like it comes in and it heals the recesses of our souls in a way that maybe we never would have otherwise known needed to be healed in the first place. But man, when we open up and are vulnerable, there's a lot that can come on the other side of that. There's a lot that can come on the other side of that if we're humble enough to be vulnerable enough to receive love. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back here in the chat. Wayne says, you took yourself out on a date. I'm so proud. It was so fun. I've been starting to do that on a weekly basis, and it's been really a good time. I go to this place, and everyone at this point now, I know the maitre d', and they're all my friends, and it's just so much fun. Yada, those that want to serve their own evil greed. I am spiritual, not religious. Yada, why are you scared? I hate that. Well, you know what though? Sometimes being scared is actually can be the very thing that like is perhaps even, that's so funny. I said, I hate that. And then I'm like, well, actually, maybe that's exactly one of the emotions we need to feel to get to be free, to get to the other side. I think it's so funny, as I was talking earlier about how much I really tried to control with my family growing up. And it was control to try to make everybody happy. That's controlling. And, I was kind of assigned that role by my parents when I was little. They were like, you're to be like Mother Teresa. And so that's a high calling for a 4-year-old. But it turns into the way it manifested was, let me make everybody happy. Let me perform. Let me become this person that can bring peace to everybody. But the thing that's really interesting is that it can, to that point of it can manifest as control. I then didn't want people to feel negative. So if there were negative emotions, I would assign this. It was like negative emotions equal that there's a problem, something's wrong, rather than understanding that pain is just a part of the experience. If we're not ever going to experience pain, we can never experience the fullness of joy. In the pain, it like hollows out the caverns of our souls so that we actually are enlarged to have a deeper capacity for joy. But if we never allow ourselves, again, the vulnerability to experience pain, we then cannot experience the equal vulnerability of joy, because joy is vulnerable. We don't know when it's going to end. So the concept that underneath vulnerability is humility, to then love, to then serve, to then experience pain even, I think we assign vulnerability with feeling and sharing kind of the negative things, but what about also the good things? I don't know if you all have experienced this, but it actually has felt vulnerable to share what's going well in my life and to share what's good. Are they still going to love me if I don't need them? Am I still going to experience relationship if my life is going well and theirs isn't? Or am I going to be excommunicated from the family? Y'all, that's a very real question. How much of our relationships are hinged on a moment in time or a season rather than who we are. And that's important for us to consider. Going back here in the chat. Yada says, I can read people's energy. It says, I can read people's energy, and exactly like how you're saying when you were young, that was me with my parents, and I was the mediator of their peace, and it ruined my childhood. Chills. Wow. It's such a big responsibility. It's such a big responsibility. And it's one that actually warrants, here's what's interesting, y'all, for all of us who experienced things that were not as they should have been in childhood. There's a semblance of grief that's necessary. You know, that's not how it should have been. So that actually needs to be grieved and processed and moved and experienced, almost like the sorrow for that. I'm so sorry. That's not how it should have been, little 8-year-old, little 10-year-old. And now that I'm the adult, and this is where, you know, I never, the way that people talk about this can sometimes get kind of strange, but I really experienced this for myself before I learned that there was all these teachings about it. So I didn't read, I don't know, I think Carl Jung talks about this, but I haven't read him. The thought of becoming the parent, like ourselves, like being the parent to that little kid. It's like that the little kid in us that was, when we had a traumatic moment as a child, we kind of emotionally stayed that age in so many ways. And so to go back and parent that little kid and be like, hey, you're safe. That's what I mean by, are we even safe in our own experience, in our own body, to then be able to, not just even in our own body, but like when we are vulnerable with ourselves, when we do admit things like, I feel a lot of pain, or I feel even joy. What are we met with in our own self? Like, are we going to judge the parts of us that aren't perfect yet? Are we going to shame the parts of us that don't look and sound like everybody else? Or do we have the ability to create a safe space for that part of us to come out and rise up? And so let's go back to this conversation around what is your ideal emotionally? Now that we've kind of dove in a little bit more, who do you want to be on an emotional scale? And I'd love for you guys to put that here in the chat if you guys are up for it. Who do you want to be emotionally? And in terms of emotional intelligence, who do you want to be in that regard? Or what do you want your relationships to look like? Or both? You know, what does emotional health look like for you in this season? You know, I said before, I needed to get healthy first. I needed to come to know who I am. And now I'm looking at my external relationships and I'm like, okay, I think, you know, when I'm thinking about a goal for me right now in emotional intelligence, I really want to let go, just continue to let go of control and to let people be themselves and to love them regardless of how they show up. So that's, I think, right now what a goal is for me. So if you guys don't mind, I'd love for you to put in the chat, what does that look like for you? Yada, I'm just reading what you've said here. Guess what? I know that I'm healing because the universe puts me around people like you, and the algorithm is actually an algorithm of healing. Oh, an intervention and turning the page to a new me. Beautifully said. Wow. And I go through these moments where I think I'm fine, and then I just start crying, and something inside of me just tells me the old you is dying and the new you is breaking through like a cocoon. Chills all over. Yada, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. And that is so true. I love that you can see that. The moving through grief at whenever it pops its head up, man, the moving through emotions really are like a tunnel. You have to move through them to get to the other side. And on the other side of them is so much freedom. Rob Vine, I love that. Burkay, no, actually it hasn't, but thank you. All right, so let's look down. What are you all saying in terms of what would your ideal be? What would your ideal be emotionally? 1,000 Day Air Radio says, I want to be calm and inspired with routine. Oh, I love that. Inspired with routine. What a way to say that. But I want to be calm. Y'all, I love 1,000 Day Air's answer because it's like, what is the emotional state? Because the reason why that's important is because that sense of calm can be the very KPI also. It's like it's our target and it's also an indicator of like, okay, so that's my target. Then when I'm not peaceful, when I'm not calm, that's me out of alignment. That's me acting in unhealth, perhaps. Now, granted, you can be excited and still maintain a sense of peace. But what he said here, inspired with routine, that's another one where it's like, okay, am I maintaining my routine? Am I maintaining the goals that I've set for myself, my commitment to myself? And if we're not keeping our word to ourselves, that's one of the best ways to break trust with ourselves. And so it's really important actually that what we say, we do. What are you committing to yourself regarding that then you need to honor? And so this comes down to our 61-day challenge. So for those of you who want to, y'all, I'm doing this for me, and I just decided to open it up to anyone who would like to join. But starting Friday, May 1st, we're going to do a 61-day challenge where it's, okay, what's the one thing that I'm going to commit to doing every single day for 61 days for the purpose of growth, for the purpose of healing, for the purpose of getting to that next level in my life. I think all of our cells die in total every 2 years. We have died and been reborn many times. Oh, I love that. Yeah, let's go. So good. Robin Vine says, it's hard to express my emotional feelings, but I will try. Robin Vine, I you know what I wonder if maybe a goal for you in terms of emotional intelligence, that could even be a target, is like, I want to know my emotions. You know, I want to give you a little 3 steps framework that really helped me. So for anyone else who is struggling with emotions and learning to know them, y'all, I had no idea what I felt, what my own experience was when I started this process and this journey 5 years ago. No idea. And so there were 3 steps that really, really, really helped me in any given moment when I started to feel. So first, it's like emotional intelligence. Step 1 is be aware. So when I start feeling something or sensing something in my body, it could be discomfort in my stomach, it could be shortness of breath, it could be tightening of the throat. All of those physical sensations are indications that there's an emotion there that needs to be moved through. So this is my 3-step process. Immediately I slow down. Whatever I'm doing, I actually take a moment to step back and pause. And then the second one is leaning into that emotion. It is actually our natural inclination, for those of you like me who didn't honor emotions and viewed emotions as weakness and just never wanted to feel anything, it's to suppress and avoid and actually pick up the phone. But for me, I had to learn to put down the phone when I started to feel something. So slow down, lean into the emotion, and then ask why. Why is that there? And try to trace like the yellow brick road back to the origin moment. What happened? Why does this really bother you? And again, the present day emotional reaction usually has roots in the past. Something happened to you back then, even if what is happening here in the present is that person really is doing something that's awful. It usually didn't start with them. It started back in childhood. So yes, I still need to hold my darling accountable if he's being unkind, which he rarely ever is. But usually my strong reaction to him is rooted much deeper. And I've even seen this where he does nothing and I'll have a reaction. And I'm like, whoa, I'm sorry. I need to go process. And so I'll sit there and I'll pause what I'm doing. I'll lean into the emotion and I'll ask why. And then I realize I'm like, oh my gosh, darling, I'm so sorry. When I was 8 years old, this happened and I didn't know that this would still be coming up. And so y'all, emotions hold data. They are just like how our body stores data, our emotions store data. And there is data to be mined. And on the other side of that data is gold. It really, really is, because for the depth that we have felt the pain is the depth that we can experience joy. So the question is, do we want to live a full, holistic, experiential life? Well, then we must be willing to experience the emotions. The emotions are teachers in so many ways. Wayne says self-awareness, recognizing that you are feeling and understanding your triggers. Resilience, the ability to cope with stress and recover from negative experiences. Balanced emotional expression. I love that. Oh my gosh. The great Joan, let's meet your darling. That's so funny. I actually would love to have him on. That would be interesting. He is far more brilliant than me. I will say that. It's like I have to keep up with him. So that would be fun. Oh my goodness. You know what's funny? That makes me feel emotional or vulnerable. I'm like, oh my gosh. Yada, no, I never got a turtle. That was another person. That's so funny. Cognitive collapse. Hello. No, I'm not. But thanks for asking. Wayne says, yes, he does have his own channel. Do you know? I would like to meet him. Oh, well, all right. I'll tell him. Okay. So, emotional ideal. And you know what, y'all? I said I would be on here for 60 to 90 minutes. I'd actually like to save our question for tomorrow of what's your spiritual ideal. And then we'll kind of continue on with this theme. You know, it warrants slowing down, examining, leaning in, because this is just a super, super important conversation. So for those of you who want to join the challenge, we're going to be meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. And otherwise, I'll be on tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern. And I think we did it, y'all. I think we just are going to wrap up here. I'm looking at my coffee, and I think I'm going to go make myself some coffee. And then I'm going to go to the gym, and then I'm going to do vertical alignment. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. This was so fun to be with you. Y'all, can I just ask a question? For those of you who already were subscribed to the channel, did you get the notification that when I posted yesterday in the community? Because I posted an update. I was going to go live last night, and I ended up changing and not going live. And I'm just wondering, did you guys get that notification? Because I'm trying to figure out a way to actually in real time connect with y'all, but I don't think anybody got that notification. Yeah, I don't think so. Oh, there was one comment from yesterday. Oh, DJ responded. DJ, hello. So yeah, if you guys can let me know, I don't think you guys get notified. This is why we need to start the knowing community, so that I can actually chat with you guys and give you guys updates. All right. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining. And I hope you guys really do make it a wonderful day. Go do something fun. I'm reaching out to folks who live in the area to try to see if I can get people together to play beach volleyball. So hopefully, good luck to me. Good luck to y'all. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. I will talk to you tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern. I'll go ahead and schedule that show right now. Talk to you soon. Bye.